Well, having spent 20 years in Sheffield, I came to the UK in 1998, and then in 2018, I moved to Hereford in the southwest of the UK. Having spent 17 years at the University of Sheffield and 20 in Sheffield. And I must say that I had wonderful opportunities in Sheffield, and what I managed to do there and achieve, I think was significant, and I think is still there. And you are one of the examples and testament that kind of work was successful, works. But there was something that always niggled me, and was that I wanted that change to be systemic, the change where that engineers have the opportunities to test their skills throughout their program, time and again, with different types of problems, whether they are from the Sustainable Development Goals, whether they are industrial, time and again, so that by the time you graduate, you hit the ground running. You know that you are an engineer. You are not just a practicing engineer. You don't need a company to have a graduate scheme to train you to be an engineer. And Hereford, where I am, is a cold spot for higher education. There is never been a higher education institution in this area. There is higher education provision, but not a higher education institution. So I was approached a few years ago to join a project that aims to be a new provider of higher education, particularly in engineering education. And that's perhaps the biggest endeavor of my life. If you think about what that actually means, starting a new higher education institution is just huge. It sounds slightly crazy, actually, but that's what I'm up to. I've been here for 2 years and a few months, putting everything in place, setting up. It's a startup funded by government. And we are working very hard to set the foundations, to develop the learning model, to get it through regulatory bodies to be approved. And in time, I hope not long from now, we'll be able to talk more about it in the present tense rather than in the future tense.
No, because one of my questions was to do with how, had you ever had the urge to take your entrepreneurial itch, your problem solving, to apply to something? And almost this is exactly what you've done. It's not, it's a startup, as you say. So out of interest, what kind of, as a startup company, and I speak to quite a few, what challenges have you faced? If you almost treat it as a business as anyone else kind of going through something similar.
Well, it is a business limited by guarantee and has charity status as well. And for the time being, until it becomes a higher education institution, that's what it is. There are so many challenges, and inertia is one of them. Getting the foundations, first of all, so that you can then get going is hard. Of course, involving stakeholders that matter. In this particular case, there are stakeholders that go from politics all the way to financial partners, actual potential customers. The whole lot is very complicated, and you have to know when is the right time whilst keeping everyone engaged. And I would say that is a very, very challenging thing to do. But of course, ultimately, it's about survival. And you'll know that better than many people. You were just talking about making sure that your company worked, that you managed to pay the rent, and that is something that people who are entrepreneurs always talk about. Cash is king, and it's true. For a project like ours, where we have a government grant, we have to be incredibly careful about how well we use that grant, first of all, that is value for money, that we protect the public's purse, whilst doing something that is incredibly complicated and challenging. And if you ever asked anyone, how much do you need to start a new higher education institution? I can tell you that the number can grow and grow and grow and grow. But if you don't have more than what you have, then you have to be very creative, innovative, and creativity, getting the right talent in place to help get the project to completion, plus keeping everyone abreast of the situation, engaged, and managing the finances correctly is paramount.
Yeah,
It's
cool.
of paramount importance.
Well, if anyone can solve it, I'm sure you can.
I hope so.